I want to thank my mom for bringing the lei for both for me and for my wife Norma over there, and I want to thank all of you for this distinct honor. I wish I could tell you that I didn't need my glasses, but I will. I think I might be the first president to give the talk with my notes on the iPad rather than on a piece of paper, so I'll take credit for that. This actually has been the most amazing year of my 22-year career, and I hope that I've represented the organization well. My relationship with the Southwestern Surgical Congress extends back almost 20 years. One of my first podium presentations, laparoscopic gastrostomy and jejunostomy are safe and effective methods for obtaining enteral access, was in 1996, right here in Scottsdale at the Camelback Resort. I hold the well-being of the organization near to my heart, as it is the organization that has played the most important role in my career. Interestingly, one of my accomplishments has been to pursue getting Hawaii annexed as a member state, and we successfully accomplished this. My letter to the executive committee at that time identified Hawaii as the southernmost and westernmost state on my map. I also feel at least partly responsible for getting the great state of Wisconsin added, as I encouraged Dr. Kotari, as he said, to join and be an active member. Needless to say, he has exceeded my expectations, and now Wisconsin is the second floating state on our map. I want to start by first thanking Noni Lowry and her staff at LP, etc. I've had several responsibilities in the Southwestern, but none more challenging, enlightening, and sometimes frightening than being Secretary-Treasurer for 6 years. As many of our more senior members recall, we made a transition from another management company to Noni and her group and have never looked back. I lived through this transition, and Noni helped me keep the finances organized and allowed us to survive some low points financially. Honestly, she and her staff always make me look good, and this year has been no different. Thank you all so much. As you all know, a lot of work goes into planning the annual program, and I'd like to recognize Dr. Kotari and the program committee for assembling a wonderful scientific program. I'm sure you will all enjoy it. Additionally, I owe a debt of gratitude to Drs. Dean Mikami, Christy Harold, and Peter Angelos for the outstanding postgraduate courses this morning. If you attended, you know that this was the highest science that was presented this morning. I would also like to acknowledge and thank Dr. Don Nakayama, the current president of the Southeastern Surgical Congress. Don, I hope we can match the hospitality you and Dr. Rick Green and the rest of the organization showed us when my wife and I were in Savannah, Georgia with you. I've had so many mentors and advisors over the years, but a few must be mentioned. This is sort of the usual protocol for these speeches, and these people helped me find my way, as you saw on Shauna's map, of an often circuitous career path. Dr. David Narwhal was chairman of surgery at Northwestern for my entire 7 years of residency and gave me guidance. He taught me surgery, but most importantly, he taught me how to be a good and decent doctor. When I was completing my residency, I went to meet him to discuss my plans to take an HMO job in Seattle. He then proceeded to give me his plan for my career. He thought I should stay in academic surgery, practice, and connected me to his good friend, none other than our former president, Dr. Bing Rickers. He assured me that Bing would take care of me since they were good friends, and he was right. I still ask myself frequently when faced with difficult situations, what would Dr. Narwhal do? Dr. Raymond Yale was on the surgery faculty at Northwestern and became my research mentor and friend. He is currently chief of surgery at the VA here in Phoenix. I worked in Ray's lab for 2 productive years, and while I learned to do research from him, the most important lesson I learned was that you could be a successful academic surgeon and have a great family life. The two do not have to be mutually exclusive. When I went to join the faculty at the University of Nebraska under Bing, the course of my career would change for the better in many ways I would never have anticipated. I went to work for him with aspirations of being the next great pancreatic surgeon and to continue my research on acute pancreatitis. Bing, as you know, is a visionary and had different plans for me, intentional or otherwise. He told me that he thought this laparoscopy thing was going to go somewhere and that I needed a niche, so he encouraged me to think about it. That was in 1993, and he could not have been more correct. In 20 years, I've never been recruited for my pancreatic surgery or research skills. But minimally invasive surgery became my academic and clinical ticket. Bing never took credit for this, but I will forever be indebted to him for his guidance. John Thompson, Jim Edney, and Scott Peterson, all former presidents of the Southwestern, are the members most responsible for me standing before you today. John and Jim were my first real partners at the University of Nebraska. John has provided me with the advice and support over 20 years that I have always cherished. But most importantly, he kept me focused on what I needed to do to move my academic career forward. He's a man of few words, but there is usually an important lesson in whatever he says, and I always listen. He is a consummate academic surgeon. Jim Edney encouraged me to get involved in the Southwestern Surgical Congress and has been my friend, colleague, and confidant for all matters pertaining to the Southwestern. Both have been friends and valued colleagues for over 20 years. Thank you to you both. I met Scott Peterson early in my years with the Southwestern. I think Jim thought it would be important for me to meet him, and he was right. He has become a dear friend and a confidant whose approach to problem solving I have admired and truly tried to emulate. He asked me to be the program chair during his presidential year, and that has really started my ascension to where I stand here in front of you today, and for this I am grateful. To our four recent past presidents, and to Dr. Bill Sasser, a past president and our current historian, you have all been incredible mentors, role models, advisors, and most importantly, friends through the years. For the golfers in the audience, I'd like to thank Phil, Ernie, and Sergio for not making the cut at the Masters, and Tiger for having back surgery, because if that weren't the case, I think half of you might not be here right now. There are a few people in the audience that I must acknowledge. As you heard, my mother Diane is here from Hawaii to share this moment with me. She reminded me that she has actually never heard me speak in public before, so I hope not to disappoint her. My mom and I have always had a special relationship. She supported me through some very difficult times and put up with my antics as a young man. She is, I know, my biggest fan, and I love you, Mom. And yes, I will always be a mama's boy. I wish my dad were here, but he passed away almost 10 years ago and far too early. He was traditionally Japanese, stoic and reserved, and while he rarely said he was proud of me, I always knew he was beaming with pride behind that quiet smile. He taught me how to be a man, but more importantly, he taught me how to be a father. To my children, Michael, Matthew, and Sarah, Matthew's here with us today. He was the only one that could make the trip. I love you all so much and appreciate all of the unwavering support and love you give me, even when I've picked you up and moved you across the country 5 times. You're all truly what make my life worth living. I'm proud of all of you. Finally, to the love of my life, my wife Norma. I'm not sure there are words to describe how much you mean to me. You have been an amazing partner and confidant on this journey. You have put up with so much over the years, and you never complain about my inability to be satisfied and my constant pursuit of my dreams. You have been my best friend for more than 30 years, so for the young people in the audience, that's actually a real BFF. We'll celebrate our 30th wedding anniversary next year when this meeting is in Monterey. The key to my success has been your love, unwavering support, and constant work behind the scenes to make me look good, and I love you so much. So on to the talk. The title of my talk today is Pyramids and Roundtables, and I'm sure you are wondering what this is all about. Initially, I thought I would give a lecture about something I had done in research, but there are so many here whose expertise would make my work seem trivial. I thought about talking about a clinical topic of interest, but everyone is doing minimally invasive surgery, and I would not want to bore you. As I assumed the leadership role, I have become increasingly interested in the projected shortage of surgeons, particularly in non-urban areas, and the role of subspecialization in this predicted shortage. However, Dr. Antonenko gave a wonderful summary of these issues during his presidential address last year. So I've decided to speak about something of great interest to me as a new chair and program director: leadership. The concept of pyramids and roundtables. The pyramid is about ideas on how to become a leader in surgery, and the roundtable summarizes my ideas about sustaining leadership. Jack Welch, the legendary former chair and CEO of General Electric, said, "Before you are a leader, success is all about growing yourself. When you become a leader, success is all about growing others." Words that ring true for all of us aspiring to be leaders in surgery. While I've always been interested in leadership, Dr. Ricker's presidential address to the Central Surgical in 2004, titled Surgical Leadership, Lessons Learned, really started my 10-year journey in trying to understand the underpinnings of surgical leadership. In that address, Dr. Rickers referred to the treatise, The Leadership Secrets of Attila the Hun, and compared surgical leaders to Attila and surgical faculty to the Huns, because, of course, they tend to be individualistic, autonomous, and as a result, very difficult to lead. Webster defines leadership as a power or ability to lead other people. This word leadership is one of the top 10% of online lookups in Webster's dictionary. As I prepared for this speech, I found that there are many varied ideas about leadership, about what leadership is, and what makes a good leader. You can really find an explanation to fit almost any idea about leadership you might have. Having said that, I ask you to bear with me as I merge what I have read with my own experiences to arrive at the concepts of pyramids and roundtables. To paraphrase President Dwight Eisenhower, leadership is the art of getting someone else to do something you want done because he or she wants to do it. Warren Bennis, widely regarded as a pioneer of the contemporary field of leadership studies, says that leadership is the capacity to translate vision into reality. The leadership pyramid best describes a career course that surgeons face as they navigate often frustrating and stressful periods trying to find their surgical identity. Interestingly, although the pyramidal structure was long ago eliminated from our training programs, career development in surgery is often a steeper pyramid than ever existed in any training program. We counsel young surgeons on what it takes to be successful and how to develop their career, but unfortunately, young surgeons are often faced with a competition to which they are not accustomed and one for which they are ill prepared. The ascension to a leadership role in a surgery department, university practice, healthcare organization, requires navigation up this leadership pyramid. Let's take the example of a successful department of surgery with 6 outstanding young faculty members who are between 2 and 7 years post-training. 5 have done specialty fellowships. All of these surgeons work well together and are friends, socially. More importantly, all are potential future leaders and all have the desire to be a division chief and ultimately chair someday. Obviously, all 6 cannot be chief or chair, at least not at the same time and in the same place. Just as it is in business, the rise to leadership in surgery is not formulaic, but requires having a plan, work hard, make sacrifices, having self-awareness, and often being blessed with a healthy dose of luck. The right place, right time concept. Clearly, a plan and approach that works for one may not work for another. So where to begin? General Wesley Clark, a graduate of West Point, recognized for his leadership as the Supreme Commander of Allied Forces in Europe, and briefly a presidential candidate in 2004, provided advice appropriate for young surgeons developing their own career plan when he said, "There are only 2 kinds of plans, plans that might work and plans that don't work. There's no such thing as a perfect plan. You have to take a plan that might work and make it work." One important point to make here is that progression up the leadership ladder does require being professionally agile. As one reads the literature on how to become an effective leader, reality hits like a cold shower. There is really no right answer, making it difficult to know what steps to take to become a leader. John Wooden, the legendary coach of the UCLA basketball team who led them to 10 national championships, including 7 in a row, 88 consecutive wins, and 4 perfect seasons, all records, had an almost folksy leadership style that worked for him and those he was leading. Remember, Wooden took a group of young men who were often from widely divergent backgrounds and figured out how to give them a singular goal and plan into which they all bought. While this pyramid of success was directed at his own situation, coaching premier athletes who are extremely talented, supremely confident, often arrogant and self-centered, and frequently feel entitled. Does that sound familiar? The recommendations from this pyramid of success would be applicable to successful development of an academic career in surgery, starting with industriousness, friendship, loyalty, cooperation, and enthusiasm at the bottom here, and ultimately striving for what Wooden calls competitive greatness, is not a bad plan for young surgeons who aspire to be leaders. A few themes seem to be common in leadership treatises, whether the writer is a politician, coach, military leader, or business guru. One of the luxuries of giving a presidential address is that you are allowed some poetic license, so I have coalesced ideas of a few and dusted it with some personal experiences into what I call the hopes of becoming a leader. Hopes is really directed to all of you who aspire to leadership. Honesty with yourself, recognizing opportunity, develop your plan, know your environment, and do self-assessment. Disappointment is inevitable as we attempt to move up the leadership pyramid. That is a given. The trek to leadership is often a competitive sport. Dealing with others with integrity is critical to developing credibility, something you must have to be an effective leader. The most successful leaders deal with others with honesty and are accountable for their actions. General Douglas MacArthur said, "A true leader has the confidence to stand alone, the courage to make tough decisions, and the compassion to listen to the needs of others. He does not set out to be a leader, but becomes one by the equality of his actions and the integrity of his intent." As I tell people, honesty is what lets you sleep at night. The more successful you are, the more likely it becomes that opportunities will be presented to you. Not all of them will be good, and some will definitely be a risk to pursue. While it can be sobering to realize, there is little altruism in academic medicine, and the grass often does look greener on the other side. So analyze opportunities carefully. It is important that the expectations your potential employer has of you match your expectations of the position. While it sounds self-serving, every opportunity should be viewed as a potential means towards your end game, whatever that is. Is it a promotion, a title or leadership opportunity, or resources you need to advance your career? You must carefully evaluate each. With all of my great partners at the University of Nebraska, my first job, you may wonder why I ever left. It was simple and unfortunately impulsive. When Bing Rickers left Nebraska for Wisconsin, I was disappointed because I had decided to take the job to work for him, and he was leaving. Another academic department recruited me, and I did not ask the right questions, and more importantly, didn't listen to the answers and really do my homework. As a result, I was only in my second job for 22 months, and I learned a great deal about critically evaluating opportunities. Just about everything written about becoming a leader implores development of a plan. Goals, vision, mission. The specifics don't matter, but it has to be yours. Whether the plan is to be an outstanding surgeon, program director, division chief, or chair, you need a chart for your course. But as importantly, you must have a plan on how to deal with adversity, because it will happen. There is no best way to deal with career adversity, but preparation, having a plan, is critical. While often the decisions about career advancement seem serendipitous, nothing should be further from reality. Is there a way to plan your advancement? I have realized that there are really two general approaches that are common, and often we move between the two. The first is to dig your heels in and use the sports analogy. You continue to try to be the MVP on your team of potential all-stars. If you are already viewed as the MVP where you are, then there might not seem to be much adversity. But staying ahead of the other competitors will be critical. Your colleagues, do not forget, are likely trying to accomplish the same things you are. Unfortunately, while this plan works for many, there are excellent academic surgeons who would have been great chairs but never got the chance. The second approach to career development, obviously the one I took, although not consciously most of the time, is the move on to move up approach. New title, new responsibilities, academic promotion, maybe new resources at each move. Every move is a calculated risk, so the better the preemptive risk assessment, the less regret is a possibility. This is where all aspiring leaders need to pause. Few of us are in this race alone. We have families and responsibilities. Do not forget this. Academic success is rarely achieved in isolation. I have been blessed to have had a partner, my wife Norma, who looked at each move as an adventure, and because of this, my kids were always supportive. This is the last shot we took on our balcony at our house in Hawaii, and you might wonder, looking at that, why did we ever leave? Unfortunately, no matter how we try, we never share our successes and frustrations at work with our partners enough. It is much easier to be supportive of you if you are not withdrawn into your own cocoon of work. Situational awareness is described as an awareness of what is happening in the vicinity. In order to understand how information, events, and one's own actions will impact goals and objectives, you must know your environment. It is critical that each young surgeon evaluates the culture and landscape of the department they are in. Is becoming a leader in that setting realistic? Is what you have to offer not aligned with the direction of the department and its leaders? Put another way, are you good but not in a great fit? We must each be a match with our environment. Make no mistake, you are not alone in your aspirations to be a leader. We are all surgeons, and in general, we are leaders and often poor followers. Competitors must be prepared to change their game plan and to deal with adversity during the race, and those who are most adaptable will persevere. Young surgeons should assess their peers. They will often be friends in confidence, but remember, they will also be competitors. On a team of all-stars, only one person can be the MVP. Ask yourself, is that you? If not, you must be willing to adapt if you want to continue to ascend the leadership ladder. Do you push harder, become more self-serving, or to put it another way, less of a team player? Change your goal or move on. Only you can know what is best, but you cannot just be a dandelion in the wind. Take charge of your direction. The ability to be introspective and have self-awareness is critical to becoming a successful leader. Assessing your goals and strengths will keep you focused on your end game. I believe that too often we as leaders direct our trainees to a field of study or clinical program that we think is best for them. Unfortunately, much like a parent does, we sometimes live vicariously through our offspring. My own early career is a good example of this. When I was completing my training, I actually started to believe what I was being told, that I could be a successful academic surgeon by being the next great pancreatic researcher and surgeon. That, of course, did not happen. You might argue that I needed to work harder and persevere, but after 10 years, yes, it didn't happen quickly, of failed efforts to obtain funding and an increasing sense of failure, I realized that there was little interest in the science I was trying to do. And in fact, when I did a self-assessment and looked at the field of research I was pursuing, I realized that I was outdated and unprepared for the molecular revolution in my area of interest, and my chances for success were rapidly diminishing. That kind of self-assessment is important, but there is a definite difference from self-doubt. Self-assessment lets you be in charge of your plan, while self-doubt lets others be in charge of your direction. A subtle but very critical distinction. Bill George, former chairman and CEO of Medtronic, describes what he calls authentic leaders. Those who genuinely desire to serve others through their leadership. They are more interested in empowering the people they lead to make a difference than they are in power, money, or prestige for themselves. In his book, Authentic Leadership, he says that authentic leaders demonstrate 5 qualities: understanding purpose, practicing solid values, leading with heart, establish connected relationships, demonstrate self-discipline. Great advice for anyone aspiring to be a leader in surgery or any other field. To summarize the discussion on the leadership pyramid, my advice to all who aspire to be leaders in surgery, and not all will, that's okay. Know your strengths, set your goals, make plans to achieve these goals, stay humble, be agile, most of all, commit. In your rise to leadership, maintaining the status quo is fine. It's comfortable, but if you are not moving forward, you are likely falling behind. The Reverend Theodore Hesburgh, if any of you don't know, my son went to Notre Dame, so I had to throw this in there. One-time president of the University of Notre Dame said, the very essence of leadership is that you have to have a vision. It's got to be a vision you articulate clearly and forcefully on every occasion. You cannot blow an uncertain trumpet. So now on to the roundtables. What happens when you become a leader? Believe it or not, rising to a leadership position may actually be easier than continuing to be successful in a leadership role. Remember, all the superstars want your job. I have long been a fan of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table and have contemplated the similarities between the successful Department of Surgery and the Round Table, and the analogy of the best leaders to King Arthur. Arthur, of course, is a legendary leader of Camelot in the late 5th and 6th centuries who led the defense of Britain against Saxon invaders. There has been significant debate about what was real and what is romanticized. My purpose is not to argue the existence of Arthur or the knights, but to use the concepts of the Round Table and the principles it seems to have embodied. According to legend, the Round Table was not a physical table, but represented the highest level of chivalry, the best of the best, if you will. The concept of a Department of Surgery being analogous to the Round Table has been one I have ruminated over for years. I tell colleagues that my goal is to recreate the surgical Camelot I was a part of at the University of Nebraska under Ben Rickers. The situation I described earlier in the talk of 6 young surgeons actually existed when I was at Nebraska. I was lucky enough to work with 5 amazing young surgeons early in my career. We worked hard, socialized individually and as families, and enjoyed a unique collegiality and kinship. We were true friends. Dr. Tim Baxter, Director of Surgical Research at Nebraska currently, is a true surgeon scientist. Dr. Ira Fox is currently Director of the Center for Innovative Pediatric Regenerative Therapies at the University of Pittsburgh. Dr. Alan Langness is Chief of Transplantation at Nebraska. Dr. Stephen Rayner is Chief of Pediatric Surgery at Nebraska. And Dr. Anselmo Alonso, one of my dearest friends, one of the best surgeons I have ever worked with. The person from whom I learned how to smoke cigars and drink martinis, Dr. Kotari. An amazing person who left us far too early. This was a department that Dr. Rickers created. He was King Arthur, and these were his young knights of the Round Table. Since that time, my goal has been to try and recreate the surgical Camelot. Why, you might ask? As all of you know, surgery is an amazing specialty, one in which we work in the most intense and stressful environments, trying to remain calm, unflappable, and decisive as we move through an operation. Few would knowingly choose a fidgety, disheveled, or ambivalent surgeon. For a brief interlude in that operating room, a surgeon is the captain of that ship. You are credited with success, and unfortunately, you are held responsible for failures. And unlike Francesco Schettino, who on January 13, 2012, in calm seas and overcast weather, ran the Costa Concordia into shallow waters where it sank off the coast of Italy, you, the captain of the OR ship, cannot try to leave on the first lifeboat when things start going south. The responsibility can be overwhelming and all-consuming. The opportunity to commiserate with peers who you respect, trust, and depend on is priceless. These are the people we march into battle with daily, whether it's to drive out the Saxons on the moors, or the 91-year-old patient with the strangulated internal hernia whose family wants you to do everything even though he has end-stage Alzheimer's disease, or the 45-year-old man who has metastatic colon cancer who just wants to see his kids graduate from high school. Having comrades in arms is reassuring, therapeutic, and it's essential. I believe that the best department leaders figure out how to create this sort of surgical Camelot, bringing together the best jousters and placing them in a conducive and supportive work environment where they can work hard and enjoy their professional and personal lives. Arthur did this well. Leadership should be easier once you build the department, and an element of one-upsmanship leads to a little internal competitiveness. Know each member's strengths, play to them. The adage about the round peg and square hole is very true. The real difficulty is keeping it all together. It is essential to have some rules of engagement, so expectations are clear. There are numerous iterations of the principles of having a seat at Arthur's Round Table. And depending on what you read, there were basic tenets attributed to the Knights of the Round Table. I have created analogous principles that I would suggest successful departments of surgery follow. Following of these principles doesn't guarantee success, but it may help to build a harmonious and positive work environment. Goals and missions must be clear. Remember, these are premier athletes who all want to be MVP of your team. Surgical leaders, chairs, and chiefs must continue to operate. A non-operating surgeon rapidly loses credibility. Every misstep is related to being out of touch or not understanding, because he or she does not operate. In his speech, Dr. Rickers said, "A good chief leads the troops into battle," or as Attila would say, "A chieftain can never be in charge if he rides in the rear." Of course, referring to the necessity of a surgical leader to be an operating surgeon. Scientific investigation, no matter the type, basic, clinical, educational, outcomes, is essential for leaders to encourage. Dr. Jerry Freed, in his recent presidential address at SAGES, paraphrased one of his mentors at UTMB, Dr. James Thompson. Without research, the surgery of today would be the surgery of yesterday, and the surgery of tomorrow will be the surgery of today. Rings true now, and it will ring true in the future. Enough said about this one. Obviously, this is why we are all in medicine. It really is addressed in the Hippocratic Oath that many of us took in medical school, and it should be the singular mission of all providers. In medicine, we are always taught that the first rule is to do no harm, and this holds true in surgery. The example of our group of 6 surgeons is the best example I have of a work environment created that fostered collegiality in work and play. There is little substitute for creating a supportive work environment, a circle of trust, if you will. This is critical amongst members of the department, but it is also a reflection of the environment you create as a leader and the people you bring together. If a department leader creates Surgical Camelot, the Knights in theory will always support the department mission and work to advance the programs and defend the honor, if you will, of the department. They must believe in you as their leader. While this is a little extreme, even for surgeons, a strong leader will be sure to lead by example. Loyalty to department members and to the mission and vision of the department will foster the willingness of department members to make sacrifices for the good of the department. As a leader, taking one for the team on occasion and at key times can pay dividends later. Honesty, integrity, compassion, transparency, and morality are non-negotiable if you want to be a leader. And exhibiting these qualities as a leader allows you to expect no less from others. As a departmental leader, one has to be very careful about the messages you are sending. These messages mill around, and the whispers down the line can undermine your success. Department chairs need to be clear about expectations. Expectations not just of their faculty, but also of themselves. Faculty need to know that integrity is critical and that all will be held to the same standard of accountability. Loss of this faith from the people who you are in charge of will lead to demise of your roundtable. We do need to remain forthright in surgery and report our complications. We have historically done this better than any other major specialty in medicine. If a chairman somehow seems to never has his or her complications discussed at Morbidity and Mortality Conference, don't expect the other surgeons to feel compelled to do so. If a chairman doesn't follow the rules, don't expect the other surgeons to feel compelled to do so. King Arthur and the Round Table may be the stuff of legend, and the principles are clearly meant to be chivalrous. As a surgeon, chivalry is a good thing. It is essential to create the kind of environment that young surgeons want to be a part of, one in which they will be supported to work hard and in synchrony, and to play hard together. Make it very difficult for them to leave your round table. You may think that the concept of physicians as knights seems ill-conceived, but I think it is absolutely appropriate. In a JAMA article in 2010 titled Societal Perceptions of Physicians, the authors describe physicians as knights, knaves, or pawns. Applying the analogy of the British economist Julian Legrand, Legrand said that human beings are motivated by virtue, the knights, self-interest, the knaves, or passive victims of circumstance, the pawns. So given the options, I think we would all agree that the public expects surgeons to be virtuous. The authors of the article state that if a society conceives of physicians as ever well-intentioned knights, it places stewardship for the healthcare system firmly in their hands. Physicians can be trusted to deploy resources wisely, minimize waste, and look beyond their narrow individual and specialty interests to protect the system as a whole. I hope we all agree that we should all be knights. The alternatives are significantly less desirable. Now back to Dr. Rickers. One of the most valuable lessons in his speech on leadership is not an Arthurian principle, but it is the one principle that I have reminded myself of frequently as I have assumed leadership positions. He said, spend your tickets wisely, there are no more. Or as Attila says, retreat is noble when continuance with the battle would result in further losses or total annihilation of your resources. My favorite of his 10 lessons. Dr. Rickers learned this lesson from another leader in American surgery, Dr. Jerry Shuck, and passed it on to me. The tickets represent the goodwill given to you when you assume a leadership role. The essence of the message is that you only get a limited number of tickets. You never know how many you have, and when they are gone, you cannot get more. So use them wisely. Dr. Rickers told me, don't waste your energy on tickets. Waste your energy or tickets on battles that can either not be one or are relatively insignificant. In closing, I thank you for humoring me. The concepts of pyramids and round tables are my own, sprinkled with a healthy dose, as you know, of some well-known leaders who have contributed significantly to the literature. My advice to all destined to be leaders in surgery is to develop a plan. Find your niche and a good professional fit. Commit to and frequently revisit your plan. And maybe most importantly, find a partner who will be supportive and understand that at the end of it all, you are a surgeon. To those who are leaders, I would remind you of what I said earlier. Honesty lets you sleep at night. I'm not sure where I fall in the debate on whether leaders are born or made. I do know that whether you think you want to be a leader or not, you really have no choice. By the nature of the career you have chosen, surgeon, you are a leader. Whether it's the operating room, your division, your family, your practice, you are a leader. I was fortunate to have a great group of mentors to emulate, and they taught me to dream and to keep my eyes on the end game. One of my heroes is John F. Kennedy, the president who created a time in America that is often referred to as Camelot. I'll leave you with one of my favorite of his many quotes. Once you say you're going to settle for second, that's what happens to you in life. I leave you with never settle for second. Thank you very much for the honor of being your president.